Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. When Brittany first reached out to me and said, hey, we want to talk with you about coming to Creative Morning and speaking on the subject matter and topic of taboo, I was like, all right. I'm like, this is going to be pretty good. We don't get to talk about those kinds of things. And, really what is taboo anyway, right? Has so many different meanings to so many different people and what that is. But it has kind of an association, to something that's maybe different, extraordinary, or, maybe even bad or wrong, some of those things that you might do behind closed doors. And so I was really excited to be able to speak on this topic, to talk about a group that's near and dear to my heart that kind of is taboo related a little bit, and that is the Bag Ladies of Indianapolis. Are any of you familiar with the Bag Ladies? Yeah, all right. I know some of you have actually been on the bus tour before because I've seen you, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I want to talk to you about this group that a lot of people don't know that exists here in Indianapolis. And it's got such a rich history overall together. So as we get started, first off, everyone keeps saying, oh, what does your shirt say? What does your shirt say? No, it does not say fuck, okay? That'd be awesome if it did. I did create a shirt one time made out of mirrors of a disco ball on that said fuck on a shirt that I wore out one time, but that was back in my 20s when I was crazy and wild. But it just says #lucky since it is St. Patrick's Day, and I was talking to Brittany earlier, and I said, hey, where's your green? And she's like, don't pinch me, don't pinch me. I'm like, it's funny how those kind of things are ingrained in us, right? When we're at, elementary school, about how you're supposed to wear red on Valentine's Day, green on St. Patrick's Day, all of that good kind of stuff. So let's move along here. So the Bag Ladies. So the Bag Ladies were born here in Indianapolis in 1981 and is quite possibly the oldest HIV and AIDS fundraising organization in the country. Did you guys know that? It's kind of wild, right, to think right here in little rural Indianapolis, Republican land, conservative land, where we have such a great governor, former Governor Mike Pence, that was so supportive of these kinds of things, that we were born right here in Indianapolis, HIV and AIDS fundraising, at a time when people really needed it the most and things were going on. And so what is this group? So founded in 1981, the Bag Ladies are one of Indianapolis' best-known campy drag queen troupes raising money for HIV and AIDS for local nonprofits and charities. And we've kind of expanded that base overall in what we've been doing, because it's not necessarily today just for HIV and AIDS nonprofit organizations, which is probably the most work that we do, but we do for a lot of different kind of charities that are in need as well, just because it fits within our mission. We have raised over $1 million, which has been directly donated back to the community and to community service organizations. So since we've been in the inception in 1981, think about that, $1 million, because of people get dressed up like a drag queen, with beards, mind you, and go out and raise money. Over $1 million, that people actually give money for that kind of cause. So think about that as we go through that. That's a lot of money that we raise in what we do. We hold an annual bus tour that has over 150 participants, where people come in, they sign up, they pay a registration fee, we ride a bus, we go around the city and we collect money, and we'll talk a little bit about that, what it is. But this is where the Bag Ladies, we patronize different organizations throughout, or restaurants and bars throughout the city, where we go and we raise money, we visit those people, talk about the good work that we do, and that's part of our fundraising effort. The bus tour is our #1 fundraising event that we have through the year. And Gary Brackett, are you here? All right, Gary is back here. That's Gary Brackett, a.k.a. Cadillac Barbie. Give a round of applause. Some of you may be familiar with the Pride Parade, which is the Cadillac Barbie Parade. Gary, how much money did we raise last year overall on the bus tour? On the bus tour? Yeah. $43,000. How much? $43,000 on the bus tour in one night. So pretty significant in fundraising that we do with all that. So it's one of our biggest events. And you'll see what that entails as we go through the presentation. But we currently have transitioned, and we're part of the Health Foundation right now, the Indianapolis Greater Health Foundation of Greater Indianapolis. And basically, it's a nonprofit health-related organization that gives money, that grants money out to organizations that don't necessarily always get it very easily. We know that there's grant money and things out there, but a lot of organizations aren't able to get that money very easily. They don't have the time, energy, or resources to serve them, et cetera. And so the Health Foundation helps fund a lot of those. One of the biggest things that the Health Foundation funds is what's called the Greg Powers DEFRA Fund, which is the direct emergency fund for people living or affected by HIV and AIDS. And that's something that it grants out, gives out lots of money every year to be able to support that organization. So, the history with the Bag Ladies is that back in the 80s, when HIV first started coming into the picture, does anyone know what HIV and AIDS was first called? What? GRID. And what did that stand for? Gay-related immune deficiency. So it was first called GRID. They didn't know what it was because it was affecting the LGBT community, mostly gay men at that point in time in the 80s. And so this was a time when people were scared. They didn't know what was happening, what was going on. You know, people were seeing their friends dying. You know, they'd see them one week at a party, the next week they're going to their funeral. And so there were a lot of things going on in the community, and the community didn't know what to do. Unfortunately, they weren't getting the support that they needed from organizations, outside organizations. People were afraid of it. They didn't know what it was. So it left this whole community just to kind of fend for itself while people were dying off. So a group of kind of pioneers, if you will, here in Indianapolis said, we've got to do something. We've got to help these people. So back in 1981, this group found a bunch of people that would hop into the back of a pickup truck. And they went around to the different gay bars in Indianapolis and started raising money. And they did that by dressing in campy drag, okay? How many of you have ever seen a drag queen before? Oh my gosh, most of you. How many of you are drag queens? Yeah, there's maybe one, maybe two. Some people have been there. But we go around and we dress in drag, and we're not pretty drag. Well, some of us are. We're not pretty drag, we're campy drag, we're fun, and that's what makes it so great. But we're going around, and they hopped in the back of this pickup truck to say, hey, we have got to make a difference, collecting money. And they first collected money to send to the gay men's health crisis in New York City. That's what they were doing, because that's where the biggest part of, the biggest group of people that were being impacted was in New York City and in San Francisco. And San Francisco was trying to organize and get their own organization to help support that. So when AIDS began to affect Indianapolis, monies were raised and kept to support local people that were affected with all of that. So it kind of transitioned from sending money out to New York and to San Francisco to actually putting it right here back in Indianapolis to support people that needed the help, with going with all that. How many of you recently watched the series on television when it's called When We Rise? Not very many of you. I would encourage you to look at that. I still think you can pull it up. Was it on ABC? Yeah, you can still pull it up on ABC, but it talks about the whole crisis and then the struggle for civil rights for LGBT folks. But, what happened is that the Bag Ladies began to see, much like a lot of people, that we had to do something. We couldn't just stand by and let all of our community, just die, because that's what was happening. We needed to get education. We needed to take a stand. And so that's what the Bag Ladies did right here, 1981 in Indianapolis, Indiana. Can you imagine? Some of you probably weren't even born in 1981, right? Can you imagine in 1981 what that was like to come out and to tell people that someone was LGBT and that we're trying to fight for this disease, against this disease that no one even knows anything about, and that it's killing people? So that was pretty courageous, a big action to actually move forward with all of that. So a lot of people say, okay, so why drag? Why would you why couldn't you just go around and raise money? Why do you have to get up and drag? Well, everybody knows that gay people love a party, right? If you've ever been to a gay party, you know that it's a fabulous party. And if you've ever been to a gay bar, you know that it's a heavy pour on your drink, right? Right. And so when you do this, you realize that there's always a party. It's something fabulous. Well, so drag queens have been a staple of the LGBT community from the very beginning. And what's really interesting with this is that drag queens are powerful figures. They've kind of always acted in the gay community as being our movie stars, if you will. They've been people that have looked up to. Because when you see the transformation of drag and what that looks like, it's kind of amazing. And you're watching a show. And so it's just something that's always been a part of our community. But did you know that drag queens were also one of the first to fight for civil rights for the LGBT community? Did anybody know that? How many of you have heard of Stonewall in New York City? How many of you heard of the Stonewall riots? Do you know who was instrumental in doing that and fighting back? Anybody? A drag queen. Drag queens, several of them. Same thing started to happen in San Francisco at the same time when police were going through the gay community and to the gay areas and going to bars and trying to bust people there for being gay and those kinds of things. So drag queens were the first to fight back, so they've been powerful figures. While people may look down on them, and treat them differently because it's men who like to dress like women for whatever purpose or reason, but they are most powerful. And we also said, oh my gosh, wow, drag queens are fabulous, right? They're fierce. If you've ever seen, how many of you have ever been in drag before? Yes, and so I'm going to pick on you, Jonathan, because I know you and I know you in the experience. What happens when you've been in drag? You're not using good makeup, first of all. But what happens when you get in drag and you get all put together?
You get a little taller. I don't know. You feel a funny sense of empowerment.
You feel a funny sense of empowerment.
Not really funny, but
You become somebody else. You have this inner person that you become, and it's something different. And you really do feel empowered. There's something about that. And it's also funny about how people will respond to you when you're in drag as well. As far as, you can be one way in drag. I've seen this happen. I've seen a person be really quiet and reserved outside of drag, but as soon as they put on their drag attire, they're like the most outgoing and person whatsoever. But something happens. There's a transformation. And that's kind of what the bag ladies wanted to do. They chose drag as a medium as a way because they're powerful, they're fabulous, and they get shit done, okay? They're out there doing things to make that happen. And so that's why drag was such a big part of it. Now, when we talk about the bag ladies, and I told you that we weren't necessarily pretty drag queens, we're not drag queens that are doing drag for a living. Drag queen is an art form, and I'm not trying to dumb it down. It's beautiful. It's amazing what people do, the transformation, all the creativity that goes into it when you have to put the makeup on and do all of those kinds of things. But we chose it as a way to be able to draw attention to ourselves because it's powerful. We're not trying to be pretty. We're not trying to make a living at it. We do this as a campy troupe because we know that we can impact people to make money. When I first got involved with the Bag Ladies, it was about 2005. The Bag Ladies were part of a group, and they were this group that it belonged to that kind of supported it was kind of going defunct, and the Bag Ladies were kind of going to go away as an organization. And Gary Brackett, Cadillac Barbie, was actually the president of Indie Pride at the time, and said, we can't let this legacy die. We can't let it go to the wayside, so we need to do something to step it up. And Gary had asked me at that point, he's like, can you help me with some of this, et cetera? And I said, absolutely, because I believe in this. If I can put on a wig and a dress and be silly and act a fool in front of a bunch of people, and they're going to actually give me money for doing that I can give to charity and support, why wouldn't I do that? That's the easiest thing ever. Not that it's easy getting all of that kind of stuff. Trust me, it is not fun. But it's a way for us to raise money and to be able to do that. And I first got involved in that group, and we were able to re-energize the group of what it was. So this is part of the bus tour. As you can see, these are very classy gals right here, especially the one down at the bottom drinking out of the bottle. So with the bus tour, as I said, we have about 150 to 200 people. We have 3 chartered buses that we rent and that we go around. How many stops, Gary, do we have? Around 18 to 20 stops we make in one night. We leave at 7 p.m. We leave at 7 p.m. and we typically don't get done until 2:30 a.m., 2:30 a.m. And we go around and we do that. So the bus tour, as I said, is one of the biggest ways that we raise money and that we're able to do that, and it's a lot of fun. And these, a lot of times, are just everyday people who come out and ride the bus one time a year for a cause in what we do. We get dressed up in drag, we go around to different bars, and they're not just LGBT organizations or LGBT restaurants or LGBT bars. We go to a lot of straight bars, if you will, or straight places where they want us to come in because they believe in the cause, they support what we do. So these are just some pictures. The classy lady down at the bottom. We've got the one who I think might be French over on the left by the armpit hair. Sorry if anyone's French. I guess it could be European. I guess they do that all over there, right? We've got that. That's me up there in the red hair, if you can't tell. I'm normally 6'6", but when I'm in drag, I'm about 7'2". Once I get the heels and the hair on, so it's pretty amazing. Most men feel intimidated by me whenever I'm doing that, and makes it very easy to hit on at the same time. So, especially, as we say, the more they drink, the better I look, and you're not going to be able to tell much of a difference until later. So that's me. This is one of our queens doing Pat the Puss. As you can see, that's Cherry Forever up there in her panties. I'm not sure what she's doing with that clown white makeup, but it's a little bizarre. But she's also another tall queen. And over on the right, that's Iona Trailer. And she's one of the hairiest drag queens ever. So she doesn't shave anything, not her arms, her back, her legs, her face, any of that stuff. And you can't tell, but I don't shave either in these pictures. And so this is part of the creativity with it. There's a way that you could do your makeup and be able to cover up things like that to where, when pictures are taken, you can't see those kinds of things. Here we are again. Up the top left, we're on the Circle in one of the carriages. So one of our stops on the bus tour is the Circle. Can you imagine when 3 chartered bus loads of drag queens pull up to the Circle in downtown Indianapolis the weekend prior to Halloween or on Halloween, depending on how the calendar falls, and we unload that bus to go to the Circle to get our picture taken? What a sight that is. We have people catcalling, honking horns, all those kinds of things. But you know what? We collect money while we're there. While anyone's on the Circle, walking around, we go up to them, we tell them what we're doing, who we are, how long we've been about. We tell them our story. We do those things because it's important to us to spread the word. And we make money. We collect tips. We do all of that. That's us in the left-hand corner. That blonde gal next to me, that's Cadillac Barbie up there. She said she's Cadillac Barbie, the bitch that has everything. And then, so we were in one of those carriages there. This is, I'm not quite sure what's going on in that top picture with the blue. I think she's having a gynecological exam or something going on there. Down at the bottom, this is our, at the end of the night where we gather together. And so on the bus tour, and we'll talk about this, is that we crown a queen at the end of the night for the year who acts as a figurehead for the organization. And that's what we're doing there at the bottom. Cadillac Barbie down here at the bottom right on the telephone. I'm not sure if she's working the 900 lines or what, but she's certainly doing something. And this is my favorite picture up at the top right hand here. So these are some former queens. But if you notice the sign in the very back, do you see that blue sign with the arrow pointing down? Do you recognize that sign? It's from the old airport. It's from the old airport that somehow they got their hands on it and brought it in to be able to do that. We weren't actually at the airport. That would have been kind of cool, but we weren't actually there. Some more bus tour photos. As you can see over here on the left, that is a whole Jell-O shot container in his mouth, okay? So we do like to do Jell-O shots when we're on the bus. We have a great time. Here's our picture, one of the pictures of us up at the Circle there in the center where we get that taken. Another picture of someone getting ready. Look at those eyelashes. How many of you like to have those on your eyes? Can you imagine that? And this is part of the creativity. And down here at the bottom right, that's Jackie O'Nasty. And Jackie O'Nasty is one of the original, some of the original bag ladies that was part of the group who has been around forever. And I can say this, and it's not divulging too much information because Jackie O'Nasty will talk about this. But Jackie O'Nasty has been HIV positive for well over 20 some odd years and is very active in the group, is very active in the AIDS memorial that has been put up at Crown Hill Cemetery. How many of you have seen that? How many of you knew there was an AIDS memorial at Crown Hill Cemetery? Not very many of you. There's a whole AIDS memorial at Crown Hill Cemetery dedicated to people who were impacted and who had died in from AIDS-related issues, et cetera, from the 80s and even into the 90s, and that's at Crown Hill Cemetery. So I would highly recommend that you get there to visit that. But Jackie Onasty is known for her lips, and I will tell you, by the end of the night, the lips get bigger, if that's possible. It looks like she was riding in the passenger seat of the car trying to put on makeup on a series of potholes. I mean, that's how bad it is with all of that, with the bus tour. Here's what's really cool. Do these photos look vintage? Yeah? They are vintage. So this is back from the early days of the Bag Lady bus tour. And guess what? The buses that were used were city buses. They were actual city buses. There's actually a story of one queen, Crystal Flash is her name, about how, you guys seen those city buses that were accordions in the center? Well, you know, they actually had like a big round circular disc, and so when they would turn, that disc would turn, and so that's what allowed that accordion to move and that bus to move. Well, the bus was so full one year, they were all standing in that disc in that area and actually got caught up in there to where they couldn't hardly get out because they had turned, and so they weren't paying attention, and plus they were probably heavily intoxicated at that point in time, but that's kind of funny. But I always thought it was cool that those city buses were used. And so you can see that this is some of the history going back to when we were in the 80s about these pictures. Now, our founder is Kobe Palmer, or Queen Mother Blossom. Kobe was the first person to actually found the Bag Ladies in 1981. And actually came up with the term Bag Ladies. People say, why do you call yourself the Bag Ladies? Why is that? And Kobe had read an article about the Bag Ladies in New York City, and that actually were just like these homeless people that had all their bags and everything. And so there was a whole article that was talking about how the Bag Ladies had spunk or chutzpah and all of that. And so he's like, that's what we look like. We look like we're these Bag Ladies. And when we're dressed up, and you know, we've got that kind of spunk, that chutzpah, and that's how they came up with the name. But I love these old photos. I love this one at the top right of this person on top of a phone booth. How many of you know what a phone booth is? Yeah, there was this thing called a phone booth that had a phone. You actually put like quarters and money in it to make a phone call. You know, I don't think they're extinct now, but there is a phone booth up there where they're on top of it with that picture taken with everything there. So I talked about the Bag Lady Queen. So basically, at the end of every bus tour, we crown a queen. And that Bag Lady Queen has been instrumental throughout the year in helping us raise money. And so when we look at the queens, they're selected based upon their community involvement, what they've done in the community throughout the year, how much money they've raised. We also have them do stage presence during their performances that they have, because that's the other thing, and I'm going to show you a couple of video snippets and things like that too, about we don't just do the bus tour. While that's our biggest fundraiser, we do a lot of shows throughout the year, fundraisers throughout the year, where we raise money for different organizations overall. And so that's part of it. Queens reign for one full year, and they lead the charge of preserving the Bag Ladies and the mission. We do have a Bag Lady board, but the queens are supposed to be that figurehead for the year and decide what are we going to do. They choose the theme of the bus tour every year, and and how they're going to represent themselves with the LGBT community with all of that. So it's quite fierce. We had, I think, 8 contestants. Was it 8, Gary, last year? We had 8 contestants last year, people vying to be the Bag Lady Queen. And let me tell you, that thing was competitive and fierce. I mean, we had people like counting dollar for dollar how much money the other queen was raising so they could beat the other queens with their donations and being able to do that. I mean, it was pretty competitive because the esteem that goes with being a Bag Lady Queen in the community is so important that people want that title so badly because it means something to them because of what the organization is, what we do, how we do it, and all the people that we serve throughout the whole community overall. So here are some organizations that we support and that we actually help raise money for. It's the Damien Center. How many of you are familiar with the Damien Center? So the Damien Center is Indiana's largest organization, being able to provide HIV and AIDS-related support services, testing, all of those kinds of things to folks. It's not just an LGBT center. I mean, a lot of the folks, probably about half of the folks they serve are not LGBT. Within the community. So we support them. We support Indiana Youth Group, which is an organization that helps youth, those who are under 18, to help those youth to be able to cope with LGBT issues coming out. There's a suicide prevention hotline. There is all kinds of things to be able to help provide that support. Step Up, which helps with HIV and AIDS prevention, so we support them. The Greg Powers Deaf-A-Fund I talked about earlier. Planned Parenthood of Indiana, they have us come and participate in some of their galas to help them raise money. Cystic Fibrosis Foundation of Indiana, for several years we've done an event that they've had. They don't have it anymore, but it was called Studs and Stilettos. Have any of you ever done that? No? No, but it's Studs and Stilettos where we have all these guys come up and we get them in drag and they have to wear a stiletto and high heel shoes and they perform and they raise money. We've done that, and in those shows we would raise anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 in one evening to help them. Little Red Door, Gay Veterans Association, and the AIDS Task Force of Fort Wayne. So not only do we just do work here in Indianapolis, we do work all over the state. We do work within Bloomington, Evansville, et cetera. But Fort Wayne, and this picture taken up here at the top, is actually at the AIDS Task Force in Fort Wayne, their dinner dance. That's their annual fundraiser every year. And so they ask us, the bag ladies, to come up every year and host the event to help make the money. We do one number there as a group, and usually that is somewhere around, we raise in that one number about $1,500. Yeah, that's a lot of money for one number, guys. That's a lot. Have you ever raised $1,500 in doing one dance number? I didn't think so. Much less in heels and a wig and makeup and false titties. I mean, come on. That's what I'm saying. My favorite story, speaking of false titties, is one that Gary has. My favorite story is, Gary's going to get mad at me for telling this, but I don't care. Sometimes you men, straight, gay, whatever you are, asexual, whatever, sometimes you men get beer goggles on and you start to think that we're real ladies. I'm sure, like, this guy's over here is like, how is that possible? Trust me, it happens. They think we're real ladies. And so some guy had a little bit too many and was over with Cadillac Barbie and was talking to her and said something to him later and said, oh, I want to play with can I play with your titties? And Cadillac took him out and threw him over there and said, go ahead, have at him. Yeah, so, it's one of those things, but yeah, it's amazing what you men will do when you had a few drinks and you start looking at us pretty ladies with all of that. So that's the Fort Wayne Dinner Dance at AIDS Task Force that we do, and that's always that's with some of the folks that are there, and it's always a good, fun time. Of course, you can see me. And I didn't tell you what my name was. So I'm the Reverend Evangelist, Sephardic Bishop, Campus Minister, Sequoia Q Pentecost Esquire, Lawyer for the Lord. Did you get that? So with that, and you're going to see Sequoia's character, but Sequoia is this very southern gal who was raised in the South, who came from a very religious upbringing, who is still very, very religious, but also very irreverent at the same time with all of that has a very interesting perspective on things. So you'll see a little bit about her character and what we do. But this is just some of the folks that we actually support, which is awesome, and I'm very proud to be a part of it and the things that we do. So we hold about 10 to 12 fundraisers a year, and that's actually on the lower end of things. We do a lot of other things too, but we do about 10 to 12 where we have to get all gussied up and go out there and do things. And so some of the shows that we have are things like Shivering Shamrocks, For the Love of Queens, Cancer is a Drag. We do a whole drag show that we're raise money to help fight cancer. To do that, and that goes out to organizations. The Sequoia Pentecost and Rachel Yoder's Country and Gospel Brunch, that's my event. It's our second largest event that we do, where we have, and it's all, as you can guess, yes, country and gospel. There is a little bit of a parody there when you've got a 7'2" drag queen hosting a gospel brunch. That is taboo in itself, right there, okay, with all of that. We have the Loud and Proud Scarlett O'Hara USO show. We do our Bag Lady Bus Tour and the Stockings Were Hung show. There is a pun there as well. I don't know if you caught that. So we do that throughout the year to raise some money. So here I want to show you a little bit of the fundraisers. I want to show you a video that was made and produced last year for the Country and Gospel Brunch, because I want you to experience what it is we do. You think, oh gosh, so you just dress up in a dress and a wig and you just get on the microphone and you raise money or you lip sync? Well, it's a little bit more than that. So I want you to experience what this actually looks like. So I'm going to pull up the video here. Yeah.
the higher the hair, the closer to Jesus. Because when you come down from that rock and you see the Lord look at you and the Lord says, blessed are you for your hair is tall. Come on into the Lord. Come on into the pearly gates. You got a one-way ticket, baby. Yeah.
We're going to do our song that always gets you in the mood to praise the Lord, and it's called I'm Going to Praise the Lord. Here we go. Come on now.
Put your hands together.
Here we go.
I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise His name. Oh, I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm not gonna be ashamed. Well, the devil doesn't like it, but I don't care. I'm gonna sing about my Jesus everywhere. I'm gonna praise the Lord.
Take it away, Simone.
Sometimes my road is heavy, sometimes my load is long. The Lord is always faithful, He always gives a song. In the midst of trouble, the Lord, He gives me peace. I can just call on Jesus, and He sets my mind at ease. Oh, I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise His name. Oh, I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm not gonna be ashamed. And we are taking dollars if we're serious. I'm gonna sing about my Jesus everywhere. I'm gonna praise the Lord.
Well, He is the rock of ages. His kingdom has no end. He's closer than a mother, father, sister, brother, friend. He gave me a promise to live like I should. I can just call on Jesus. He'll help me for my good. Oh, I'm gonna praise the Lord. Thank you.
I'm gonna praise His name. Oh, I'm gonna praise the Lord.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna be ashamed. Thank you, baby.
Well, the devil doesn't like it,
But I don't care. I'm gonna sing about my Jesus everywhere. I'm gonna praise the Lord.
Here we go.
Gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise His name. Oh, I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm not gonna be ashamed. Well, you know what?
The devil doesn't
That
like it.
devil don't like it. But I don't care.
Sing about
I'm gonna sing about Jesus right here. It's you. Right here. I'm gonna sing about praise the Lord. Well, the devil doesn't like it, but I don't care. I'm gonna sing about my Jesus everywhere. I'm gonna praise the Lord.
Keep it going, y'all. Yay! Here we go again. Come on. Come on.
I'm gonna praise His name. Oh, I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm not gonna be ashamed. Well, the devil doesn't like it, but I don't care. I'm gonna sing about my Jesus everywhere. I'm gonna praise the Lord. Well, the devil doesn't like it, but I don't care. I'm gonna sing about my Jesus everywhere.
Thank you.
I'm gonna praise the Lord.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Hallelujah. Yes. We're gonna give praise up in here tonight.
Thank you all very much for coming. We'll see you next year. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And so as you can see, that just talks a little bit about of the organizations, how much money we raised. So just in that one event, we raised almost $7,300 for that, which goes to the Damien Center Kobe Palmer Food Pantry.
Church with the bag, ladies.
Amen.
And that's it, which is really pretty cool. So you kind of get an idea of what we do and how we do it. One thing you'll probably notice about me if you've identified me in those videos, which I'm sure you probably had no idea which one I was. I always wear, my long kind of dresses and all of that kind of stuff and everything. So because of the religious background with all of that. How am I doing on time? Are we? 10 minutes? Okay. So I'm going to move forward so we can go ahead. This is our legacy of what we're doing. And so the last thing that I really want you to kind of see, this kind of sums it up with everything. And so this is one last video that I want you to be able to look at as well. So basically, So that was a trailer. They're doing a documentary about us, and I thought that was appropriate for us to be able to play that around. What I loved about how you started out today was just about people who give a damn and being important and making a difference, and that's important. And that's what we do as the Bag Ladies, and it's important for us to be able to do that. Many of you might be familiar with Harvey Milk, who was an activist for gay rights in the 80s, who really fought hard and who was assassinated by someone who had a very different opinion on how things should be. And I wanted to end with this quote because I think it's very fitting for everything that we do and how we operate and how we live our lives and about giving back to the community and why we do the things that we do. We all have a place. Don't think that there's no way you can give back, because there is. As they said in the documentary trailer, if you can put on a dress and go out there and make a difference, yeah, it's the small things that we can do. But as Harvey Milk said, I know you can't live on hope alone, but without hope, life is not worth living. So you got to give them hope. You got to give them hope. So it's our job to give other people hope when they think there's no hope there. That's what we do, and that's our charge. And I thank you, and I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation here today, and you've learned a little bit about Great Legacy here in Indianapolis. Had a little good times, looked at some pretty women in lots of makeup and big hair. And again, I want to thank you.